Hello and welcome to Higher Ed Live, the live web show all about the world of higher education. I am your host, as always, Seth Odell, coming to you live from the Mill Yard, Southern New Hampshire University here in Manchester. It's a little bit of a quiet night, a little bit dark at the Mill Yard, but we are still going strong. I'm bringing you Higher Ed Live, as I do each and every Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Tonight's show is going to be a really good one. I'm really excited to talk about it. It's about a very interactive, integrated social campaign, something with some big ambitions and some pretty cool executions. I'm excited for you guys to be a part of it. It's hashtag NYU. But before we do get into that, as always, let's thank the sponsors that help make Higher Ed Live possible each and every week. We are sponsored by the folks at Integral, the creators of the Schools app on Facebook. They can air a private Facebook community that help you boost enrollment and retention, and find out how to welcome transfer students with social media with a great blog post they put out most recently. And tune in next week as Integral founder Michael Staten will be here in person on a special Tuesday night show to chat with me here in New Hampshire. We're also sponsored by OmniUpdate, the leading web content management system CMS provider for higher education. The company's web CMS OU campus, well, it's secure, it's scalable with great tools, features, deployment flexibility, and an awesome user community. Check out what Elizabeth College was able to do with content reuse and storytelling with OmniUpdate. And bottom line, guys, if you're thinking about a new CMS, make sure to think about OmniUpdate. They're the biggest in the industry for a reason. And we're also sponsored by Scavenger, a Google-funded mobile game about going places, doing challenges, and earning points. If you're headed to High Ed Web 12 in just a few days next week, do not miss out on great prizes from Scavenger U. You guys are going to have a great time at High Ed Web. I did last year, but nothing is better than cleaning up and getting free stuff. So make sure to follow Scavenger U and make that happen. We are also sponsored by Converge Consulting, which is a measurable multi-channel marketing firm. They help their clients strategize, execute, and analyze their marketing efforts. They have a slew of Google Analytics workshops coming up. So if you guys are into Google Analytics, if you're into data, making smart decisions, why don't you let Converge help you do what you do better with the power of good data? Do that. Make it happen with Converge. So guys, again, welcome back. I am your host, Seth Odell. Tonight's show is a very exciting one I've been trying to kind of get going for a little while now, actually, and I'm so excited to bring it to you. It is a really exciting, interesting topic called hashtag NYU. So if you haven't heard of hashtag NYU, well, sit back. You are about to learn a whole lot about it, and the reason it's coming on is because, well, it is a really interesting integrated social media campaign. It's not just one channel, one account, one thing. It's big. The folks at NYU are thinking very big, actually, with this, and because of that, I want to bring them on to talk about that because I think they have some big ambitions and are doing some really cool stuff with this, and I think it's important to make that happen. So without further ado, we're going to bring on tonight's guests. So allow me to welcome, it's Nick Jensen, Marketing Communications, Social Media Tech Manager at NYU to Student Affairs, and Aaron Callahan, Senior Director for Interactive Media and Global Communications at NYU. But to both Nick and Aaron, welcome to Higher Ed Live.
Thank you.
Thanks, Seth.
You almost got Nick Instagramming, taking a picture of you just
We can definitely do live Instagrams while on the show. It gets a little meta. It kind of gets an awesome experience going on. So I love it. Thanks to both of you guys for coming on the show. So you guys watching, I've been trying to get both Aaron and Nick on for a few weeks now, but let's say the schedules are pretty crazy. But we made it happen. They're staying late tonight to talk to you guys all about what they're working on. And I'm excited to hear about this campaign again. With social media, a lot of times we think about just managing an institution's account or doing one little campaign here or there. This is a pretty big thing that you guys are tackling. And I think when I first had it brought to my attention via Twitter, I kind of had a little bit of a jaw drop moment. I was like, wow, this is pretty ambitious stuff. This is huge. This is really cool. And I'm excited to hear all about it. So without further ado, I'm going to throw out the first big question to either one of you that wants to take the stab at it. For folks that are uninitiated, like I myself was just a mere few months ago, what is hashtag NYU as far as the 30,000-foot view of what this kind of a project is?
So hashtag NYU it's really the face and the, I guess, brand presence of the Office of Interactive Media at NYU. We wanted to just not be just an office, but kind of have more of a personality than that. So we decided to literally make something a little bit different.
I think for us, we're actually housed within Student Affairs. So I think that's very unique. We work closely with our webcom team, IT, but we are responsible for marketing about 15 offices in Student Affairs, and then about 5 or 6 others that have kind of come on board just, due to the lovely nature of higher ed and taking new things on. Our spiritual life offices, our summer programs, our winter programs, those kind of things. And we very quickly wanted to integrate those into platforms that were already out there and connect students to one another. Hashtag NYU was kind of that conglomeration. And we've been very lucky because we've been supported from the top down. Our VP for Student Life is amazing and has always been very supportive. So I think we're incredibly lucky in that sense. And That's something I tell him every day as a youngster, that it's really, that's why this was possible, is that everybody around us is actually supporting and trying to make this happen. So for us, hashtag was kind of this, throw it all out there and let's see what lands as far as marketing our student affairs programs, but also building community and connecting students to one another and connecting them back to the university. So that was kind of how we came about.
And those are some pretty ambitious, big goals, talking about connecting people to each other, to the institution, to your programming. That's a lot. So we're going to talk about those goals and how you guys are achieving them in general throughout the show tonight. But let's talk about that at least on the surface. So what are some things that this project does? How does it work? What does it look like? And then we'll probably dive into a few different avenues within that to get some more details. But so if those are the goals, to connect people to the institution, to each other, to your programs, how does hashtag NYU do that? How do you guys try to go out and utilize this kind of a campaign to achieve those goals?
So, I mean, one of the things is we want to change how we're communicating with students, be meeting them both in traditional spaces, kind of augmenting ways that we have always done business and, basically augmenting email, and also meeting students in their space. So literally giving them platforms to connect to each other and also just make, I guess, a better link or a better pipeline to connecting with the university and the services that we like to say we do so well on the ground, that our colleagues do so well in real life. I don't like using that word in real life because your online is real life as well. But, let's say on the ground, in person, bringing those, abilities online as well. So, I mean, we, through different contests, campaigns like that, just throwing out questions, just in general being interactive and responsive to stuff that's already going on online. And
yeah, a lot of it, you talked a couple weeks ago about metrics and going out and literally finding one person at a time and answering their requests. So following a hashtag NYU was kind of how the name came about, is that we were constantly searching to see what people were saying about the university. What did they like? What didn't they like? And again, I think Nick's background, Nick is a 2011 grad. I met him as a student. He impressed me. I was a one-person office for a very, very long time. And very quickly, his ideas of, hey, this is a great place, but it can be better, I felt the same way. But me getting buy-in from my co-administrators' leadership is very different, saying that students want this compared to somebody who's actually a student saying, why aren't we doing this? I stole him the minute he graduated and kind of pitched to my boss that, this is who we need to hire. And I think they were looking at me like I was crazy, because here I am, they're saying you finally have a budget to get a second person. You have a bunch of hats you're wearing, you're in Abu Dhabi at least once a month, and you want to hire a 12-year-old. And he knows that. But I did, because you can't teach the space, you can't teach the community, and you certainly can't get somebody up to speed about a place that's this complicated, this complex, unless somebody already knows it and loves it. So having somebody who cares about this place as much as I do was so important. And that's kind of trickled down. We have a third employee who's with us now, who's also a 2011 grad, and that's made all the difference, because when we're out there actually caring about NYU and asking people to tell us what we can do better, it actually is real. We want to know. And I think that scares a lot of our colleagues, because they don't want to know. That means more work. And I think for us, we're very much guided by how can we facilitate what students need. And
I absolutely love that, and I totally agree. I think a lot of times it is people are a little apprehensive to put themselves out there, but it's so important that we do. So as we continue this conversation, I think there's a question that I'm sure probably came up internally that I think folks would benefit from hearing your answers, which is why do you think it is that the things that you guys are trying to do with hashtag NYU couldn't have just been done with the main NYU account? And so where do you see yourselves complementing that account? Where do you see their differences? How did you guys go about thinking that there's two identities that should kind of be in the same family and help each other, but there still should be some level of distinction?
I think for us, we did a lot of research. I think even prior to Nick being hired a year ago, we were out there, and again, we were kind of charged with go out, what are other schools doing? How are they using their main accounts? How are they using student affairs? What can we do to kind of help the university brand, but also connect students? And I think that's the distinction. I think the main NYU page, and I think a lot of large universities, they have an incredible responsibility to respect the brand, to make sure that NYU is represented in a very positive light. It's good for prospective students, it's good for alums, it's good for students. Sometimes in that order. And I think for us with student affairs, it was much easier for us to say students are our priority, prospective students are our next priority. So we have a little bit more leniency to be out there connecting. The whole word of monitoring 3 years ago, well, we can't have a Facebook page, you have to monitor the content. I mean, I think all of us in this space, the iPhone's on, it comes to you, you do it. It's just the living and breathing and walking. It's what you do because you care about what you're doing. I think with public affairs, there's a different step to it. I think when there is a negative connotation, you have to have some distance from a space sometimes. Whereas in student affairs, you need to be connected, be able to get to that student, be able to make them feel that this is their home and they're supported. Mm-hmm. So for us, it was a very distinct line. And when we were building things, that's what we kept thinking through, is yes, we need to connect to the brand. We need to complement the brand. We certainly need to, the backing of everybody who supports us with webcom, ITS, all of those things. But what we're doing is a little different because it's community building. And it is changing how we communicate, which are things we were already doing anyway with students. So that's how we differentiate what we're doing.
And I think it's really important, too, that the audiences aren't exactly always the same. This is something I've talked a lot about on this show. People have heard me talk about is like audience fragmentation with social media. And I found a lot of times, on our main account at SNHU, for instance, we try to only post content that is relevant to everyone. But who's on your main account? You have faculty, staff, family members, plus students, prospective students, alumni, community members potentially, fans of athletics, fans of academics. You have a really wide area. So these main accounts a lot of times have to be everything to everyone. And in order to do that, I think you'd have to kind of pull back and refrain that voice a little bit. And it's not to say it's not important, but like at SNU, we have an SNHU on campus Twitter account specifically for students on campus because we have a large online contingency. So that way these students can know tonight's event has been moved or this is a new thing that's going on just for them. And likewise on Facebook, we have an online student-only Facebook page that can talk about term starts and really specific information. And I definitely think that's something that I'm surprised I don't see more of that still. Is it's not just breaking apart channels based by academic department, but by audience. It's like targeting a certain area because that way all the content you provide them is relevant to them. So that brings into my next question then, which is who is the audience for this? How much do you see if it being current students? If it's current students, are they literally students that are in New York on campus? Obviously, I think like anything, prospective students are probably listening into this because you guys are creating cool content. So who do you guys see as being kind of like the audience for the content that you're creating with hashtag NYU?
I think right now, for us, we're very complex. We have 50,000 students, 14,000 employees. We're on 15 campuses on 6 continents. It's an amazing network. And for us, the students come first, I would say, and Nick may feel differently about this, but I think the 18, 19-year-olds, the freshmen who came on campus this year, being able to teach them that this is a part of the campus culture was huge because they don't know better. I mean, they don't know what NYU was a year ago. They really don't care. So the cyclical thing is working well for us. So really the demographic that I'm focused on are the students who have just gotten to campus, who are so excited, who aren't afraid to wear NYU, who love the place, who haven't been jaded, all of those great things that come with growing up, but keeping that energy and excitement and sharing those stories then ties into the prospective students. It ties into the alumni, getting them back involved, and the upperclassmen wanting to jump in and share their wisdom and be a part of something that's new and fresh. So that's how I look at it.
I mean, I absolutely agree. And I think to add to that, I've had, by virtue of, letting people know what I'm doing with my life and how hashtag NYU is a big part of it, I think we've had a little bit of alumni engagement from like my year, from my friends who are interested in seeing, this is really cool. I wish this existed when I was a student. And I think that's what we're seeing with upperclassmen now too, that once they find out about it, they're really excited. And they've been asking us, when are you going to do like a contest or a campaign for us, like we did for freshmen? So I think it's just a matter of like, the rest of the year kind of focusing more on different populations as well and bringing everyone into the fold.
Correct. And I think we just hired our intern class, which is a big deal for us. We are a staff of 3. And we actually hired 15 interns. 16. 16 interns as of yesterday.
Wow.
It's the equivalent of 2 full-time employees. So it's about 80 hours a week. And they range from freshman to grad student. They're on our NYU campus, our Abu Dhabi campus, our Poly campus in Brooklyn. And they're the ones who are shaping what we do. So that's, I think, a very unique trait that they're running platforms and taking ownership. They're building content. When we talk about contests, we're not guessing. We're not throwing a bunch of things in a hat that administrators think students want to do. We're actually sitting with this group. They're pitching the ideas. They're pitching the stories that they would want to hear. And that's been really, really neat for us. So I think for them, it's their peers are the audience. And also future employers. If you want to tie something really neat into that, it's the people who are our peers in social media across other universities, but it's also the people who are using social media space. The students that we've hired are all digging social media, so that's a very important thing to them, is having that network and building it strong.
Mm-hmm. Well, I got to say, first off, your answer has only served me up with so many more awesome questions. I mean, 15 interns, teams, what kind of content, all sorts of things. Before we get into any of that, I want to back up and just ask a tangible question. You guys said something about a campaign for freshmen. So I'm going to ask you all sorts of questions about content, what you share by platform. I'm just really curious. But let's start off with this. You guys said you had a campaign for freshmen. Was it this year? If it was, tell me a little bit about what this was or what it looks like, just so we can start that as an example of maybe one of the kind of things that #NYU can present.
Cool. Our summer in July, we launched our first campaign, I guess our first major face as hashtag, being out there, kind of getting the word out. And we had about 5,500 incoming freshmen, and they were entering in 6 different sites. So New York, everybody knows NYU, New York University. But these freshmen were entering in New York, Abu Dhabi, London, Paris, Shanghai, and Florence. I got that right, wow. So they were entering all those places. We gave them an opportunity, run through Facebook. We use Facebook. We used a small app, a third-party app, and actually ran a contest asking them to introduce themselves in one word. So we called it One Word, One World, this whole global network thing that NYU is. And what we found is first of all, we got entries from 37 different countries. So students coming in from 37 countries. So the whole Facebook only works in the US or Facebook only works in these countries, blow it out of the water. We got a lot of submissions. They posted them on the Facebook timeline, and we had them do that so that we could immediately respond. And if somebody posted their word was dance, it gave other students an opportunity to say, oh my gosh, I dance too. And we had them, use a hashtag with where they were from. So we kind of played on this whole hashtag thing. Yeah, we're on Facebook, but let's make a game of this and hashtag your name, hashtag your word, hashtag where you're from. And we could kind of track and quickly, find down through the timeline where people were from and try to connect them to one another before they arrived. We did voting online. The winners were actually featured at our freshman convocation, which is a big deal. It's at Beacon Theater, which is a large, large place in the city. All the freshmen together. Who was our alumni speaker?
Jerry O'Connell.
Jerry O'Connell was there with the president. So they play this video featuring them, on the massive screen in a New York City arena. And they got to be featured in front of their new friends, their new family. The buzz around it was really neat because those students came back afterwards. We had a party at our VP's house. He invited them all back to meet each other in person. So it was kind of that bringing the community now into real life. And they all said they felt like celebs. They walked around campus and people knew who they were from this one contest, from putting themselves out there. So that was kind of our basis to talk to freshmen about being bold, and yes, Eric Stoller, that was to you, about being able to literally put themselves out into that space and not being afraid to say hello to one another. So that was our first thing. I think it was a pretty successful launch, and we've been getting a lot of buzz around here.
And you talked a lot about obviously using Facebook as one of the platforms for doing that. And I'm curious, and that brings up the question too about how many of the platforms you're using, because I was doing some research, and you guys are in a lot of different places. So, without further ado, probably one of the more loaded questions of the evening for me is, what platforms are you using? How are you using them, and how did you choose them? So, we can go platform by platform if you want. I'm just really curious as to how you guys approach things, because it looks like the one thing you're doing that I think people should know at home is really great is you're not just putting the same exact content on every platform. And I think that's an easy thing to do, and that's not the right thing to do. And I give you guys a lot of credit that you guys are really clearly embracing each platform for what it's meant to be used for and what people are there to find. And I think it's pretty cool. So what platforms are you using, how are you using them, and what kind of stuff are you using on them?
Okay, so Facebook is the big first one. Actually, let me take a step back. Twitter is actually the first one. We started on Twitter before we got our Facebook page going. And the reason is I think we were going to conferences and different things and wanted to connect this idea to our peers at other universities. And then because we were just going into the summer, students were kind of leaving, so we thought this is a good soft land to test this on. But yet have like this presence that we fully intend to launch later in the summer.
Soft for him. I hadn't been on Twitter until I met this guy, so my Twitter birth was very quick, and it wasn't painful, but it was intense.
Yeah, and then we launched the Facebook page, and it was kind of like we do a 2-week trial and really monitor it closely, and then kind of start going faster and faster. I think the next one then was probably Tumblr. And then we got into Pinterest from working with different other things, YouTube, of course, to share things. But you're right in thinking that we don't believe that every piece of content should be shared in the same way, because then you're not utilizing the full potential of that. So I know that it's kind of some people's best practice for an office to link their Facebook and Twitter account because it's less man hours, fewer man hours actually.
Yeah, thank you.
But we would never actually recommend that to anyone because there's a lot of potential on Facebook that you can share more media, you can share links that will actually have a preview, you can be a little bit more descriptive on Facebook, and so we don't suggest we are huge believers in brevity, but we don't suggest having tweets be in Facebook. And we are very tongue-in-cheek we will sometimes use hashtags within our Facebook status updates. But it's more so because we're doing this kind of voice of making fun of ourselves, even like I think people know that we're in the know of social media.
But I think hashtags become a big play on words too, because when our colleagues hear about who we are, and again, our VP for Student Affairs, Mark will go out and he'll basically go out and say, "This is the best thing since sliced bread." So he's talking about us. And he's new to social media, but he's great. He wants to be in the space, and that's a wonderful thing. But when he talks about us, he'll say hashtag NYU and all those things. But his audience doesn't necessarily get it. So we'll get emails that will be # NYU. We'll get emails that will be # the word hashtag NYU. We'll get # NYU #. I mean, it's become a big thing. So we laugh about the hashtag all the time and kind of use it as our inside joke. But I think that to the platform question, I think Twitter and Facebook we knew we needed to be on. And we knew that had to be set. We needed to be comfortable with our voice. We needed to have an understanding, or at least an educated guess of trial and error of how much to post, what the content, what was being shared, have some metrics around that to make sure that what we were doing is what our audience wanted and trying to shape it accordingly. But what was interesting with like Pinterest and these other things, even with Instagram, these were interns that came to us and said, "Hey, we did one word, one world. Why don't we start a Pinterest board to share those things so that we have an archival version of them?" So any time that we moved into a platform, and Nick, this is kind of his Bible, is don't jump into a platform unless you're really ready to like take care of it, be on top of it, be there. And that's how we are trying to tell all of our colleagues who now want in this space. And it's really super exciting to see how this is spreading. It's been contagious around here that all of the offices we meet with, schools, they now want to jump in. So it's almost trying to stop them for a second from jumping off the diving board and say, okay, do you have swimmies? Like, do you have a bathing suit? Do you have goggles? Are you ready for this? Like, do you understand what this is? And this isn't just hurry up and go, that you really need to have a structure. Or an understanding, or a really smart teenager who's going to help you do this. And I don't mean that. It could be somebody who's 35, like myself, who lives in the space, but interns are best.
Well, that brings up my next question then. How do you guys utilizing interns? I mean, a team of 15 is a pretty, one, huge number, so one, that's awesome for you guys for getting that. Two, it's a kind of a number that, while very large, I would imagine is difficult to kind of get all 15 in a row and doing things and moving. So how do you guys approach this? I mean, what are these interns doing? I mean, what are the kind of things they're working on? I'm just totally curious to kind of dive into your heads as far as how that works as far as the back end of hashtag NYU.
So it is it's challenging to work with 15, 16 different schedules, but it's a challenge that we gladly accept. And the way that we've kind of structured it is we have right now 2 different types of interns. We have community and social media interns and storyteller interns. So the community and social media interns, we meet weekly, we come up with content, we think of what's going on in the university that we can share, that wants to be shared. So I'll get back to them in a second. Then the storytellers are video students who are going out and really capturing on video the story of what is happening on campus. And going back to the social media interns, they are hopefully helping the storytellers spread their message and also, doing a little bit of it themselves. And the way that we've kind of structured it is that each of our social media interns is the point person for a platform. So we have a Facebook person, a Twitter person, a Tumblr person, and then they'll have a few people on their team, but that way that we can talk about, oh, well, this is one piece of content that we do want to share on multiple platforms. How does it change on Twitter versus Tumblr, being, very similar media microblogging sites? What can we do to share that?
And in addition, we also have a few interns. Clearly, we have 15 interns. We're not running 15 platforms yet. But we have campaigns. So, again, we have these auxiliary offices that we support. So there's about 20 of them. But something like our Center for Spiritual Life, which is a very, very large endeavor at NYU, it's an amazing, amazing thing that they're doing, both educationally and programmatically. So we have a student who is responsible for that campaign. So they run both the Facebook and Twitter accounts for the campaign, but they have the luxury of tying into this other team of interns and brainstorming. And they're connected online. We have a Facebook group that they're able to connect to each other in between projects, be able to go back and forth with one another. We encourage them that they're wasting their time if they spend the semester not connecting with one another, because this is an incredible experience, again, at a university that's so large, to be working with people who have such similar interests and have so much talent and things to offer, that we really try to push them to connect to one another. And I know that's how I've done most of my learning over the last year and a half. I mean, if you had talked to me 2 years ago, the excitement wasn't there because it is this uphill battle. And I think getting Nick, Guido, who's our other guy who came on board, having great people around you who want things to succeed is half the battle. And when you put 15 young faces in front of you who really care about this, and this is their school, and this is their presence, and they're driving the content, it just reinvigorates from the ground up. So I think that's been the most exciting part about the internship project for me. We did something interesting too, because, or at least I feel it's interesting, you can chime in. When we were hiring, we actually only advertised these on social media. So these interns, we didn't put them out there. So they're in our CareerNet system, which is how we run all of our interns through NYU. So unless people were actually using the search term social media or storyteller, they weren't finding these jobs on CareerNet. They were finding them because they had heard about #NYU, or they were searching on Facebook, on Twitter, where we were generating content. We had 200 applicants in the first 48 hours. So this is indication of we need to be in this space. And I think 2 years ago, I just had this conversation at a training we were doing today. 2 years ago, students didn't want us in this space. And they would say very clearly, maybe not that they didn't want us there, but they weren't quite sure how that would look. And on the admissions side, where I was working, and also in the student life side, it was the monitoring thing. So that was the conversation, 24 months ago. Now, for that many people to have an interest in being in the space, it shows to their quality, but it also shared to their wanting this to succeed. We had hundreds and hundreds of apps. We actually sent a secondary questionnaire, and Nick's genius question that he put on here for the cover letter was, instead of a cover letter, explain why you're perfect for this position in 140 characters. And that was gold, because we were immediately able to get to personality. We were able to narrow down. I think we got some kids who are on the shyer side who probably wouldn't have interviewed as well, but really are incredible in this space. We followed up with other questions such as, what can NYU do better in social media? What's missing in telling of the NYU story? What platforms you're on? All of this great stuff. But we couldn't hire hundreds of students, but we collected all of that data from NYU students by filling out this questionnaire.
That's awesome. So now, talk about the students. Are they from different campuses? I mean, are these interns all from the main New York campus? How is that set up?
Right now, we're mainly New York for the last 6 months. We have one student at our Polytechnic across the river, which is our engineering school in Brooklyn, and Abu Dhabi. We're working with them right now, our campus over there, which is our other Portal campus. It's a 4-year university, freestanding. Those students would never have to step foot in New York to get an NYU degree. It's a very interesting structure that could take hours of a show. But the next step that we're doing, Nick can talk a little bit about.
The next step we're doing, since we can't hire hundreds of students all at once and pay them like we'd like to, we still feel like there's still somewhat of a void to be filled in the sharing of the NYU story, is we're launching what we're calling Community 2.0. And it's going to be a team of students who are really passionate about what's going on and sharing the NYU story, that are going to go around, and they're going to be on all
15 campuses.
15 campuses. Sometimes I don't remember how many we have. So when students are studying away in Florence or Accra and Ghana or Buenos Aires, we'll have representation there to share what's going on that campus. And so we'll have a lot of them in New York, a lot of them in Abu Dhabi. So when students are going and studying abroad, they can stay connected to what's going on at their home campus and see what's going on, around the world.
Wow, that is very ambitious and very cool.
It'll be about 40 to 50 students we're hoping to launch in this upcoming spring. And we've already sent out some things with interest. Students who applied for the position but did it, who may have been too young, or we just had too many. I'm studying film, I'm a freshman, I'm from California. We really want to diversify and get the place out. Many of them replied that they want to do this volunteer position. And that was interesting to us because, again, they want to be in the space and they want to learn. So for us, if we can capture that and organize that up through the interns so that those students are connecting to their peers, the peers are using us to advise and to facilitate. I think that's how we really run our office, is facilitating the needs of the students and also getting the buy-in from other staff, from the schools, from the leadership, that what we're doing is critical in the NYU story and in getting students and also in connecting to them and making sure that their experience is the best it can possibly be.
So brings up my next question when we talk about connecting with students. Just generally speaking, how do you introduce, it's a new question you guys I know just recently launched, but how do you view introducing yourselves to students? How do you see them, like a new student coming in, finding out, and this is probably something that just in general your offices deal with all the time, is how do we connect with new incoming students, but just in general, how do you view that process of a prospective student becoming an enrolled student, discovering this world? How do you guys kind of, what are your thoughts and approaches to sort of outreach? How do you get in front of them so they know that you guys exist and are a viable place for them to connect with?
This year, one word, one world. The contest was, the timing was right. I can honestly tell you in June when we were asked to do a video contest, Nick and I looked at each other and said, okay, well, there goes summer. You kind of knew that was that. But our VP was able to send an email to each and every student from the VP announcing the contest. That was the only email they got from him this summer. That wasn't logistic. I think there were two others that were logistics about a bunch of things. But that actually had a link to a YouTube video. It linked to a Facebook page. And I think it caught their attention. So they didn't know that we haven't been a thing longer. They didn't know that we weren't a part of the fabric of the university until a few months before. So we quickly got students that way. And I think paired with the class of 2016 pages on Facebook that naturally arise, we really worked hard to kind of get our name out through that and work with our colleagues. We have amazing colleagues across the Division of Student Affairs who are already advertising their offices. So from athletics to health services to welcome week and orientation programs, they were already doing this. So we were able to partner with them to get the word out of who we were. And I think, again, we didn't do a ton of marketing. I don't think we want to market who we are. We kind of want people to find us. I think that's kind of the organic nature of this. And we don't want to be a mouthpiece. I mean, I guess that's part of it, and we don't want to be viewed as such. So if students find us on their own or through a friend, it's very different than we put an ad in the school newspaper. So for us, we kind of just want to see where this goes. And I think when we do the contest with upperclassmen over the next couple months, we're going to see how our success is working.
Very cool. So next question for you is another big one with a project this big is what does success look like to you guys? And how do you, if you can, measure it? I mean, how, it's kind of part of the project, this kind of complex at times. How do you know at the end of the day that you feel like this has been a success, this has worked? Is it literally like a number of people that like something, or is it more of a feeling like people engaged, or is one really strong comment back enough? I mean, how do you approach kind of trying to tackle that, how's this going kind of question?
Well, success for me is if at the end of the year, Mark will let me hire another student who has just graduated to come join our team. So that's how I know we're being successful with what we're doing. But I think there's a lot more to it, but that's how I'm looking at it. If we can get a 4th staff member in May, I'll be a very happy camper.
In terms of like looking at like just plain metrics, I think our idea of success is definitely more qualitative than quantitative. Of course, we will always have like benchmarks to see where we are and maybe in comparison to other peer institutions and whatnot in terms of how many Facebook likes we have, how many Twitter followers we have, et cetera, and even how many interactions. I think that can be quantified. But I think there's 2 different ways that I think we're measuring success. One is on the student realm of seeing students excited, interacting with us, and this kind of organic viral nature of how they're finding out about us is one thing. Because I was a student 2 years ago, and already students that I know, like my residents who, when I was an RA, coming up and saying, this is really cool what you're doing, them knowing about it in the first place is pretty cool for me. But, that's the one hand of the students, and that I think we've been pretty successful with, especially for freshmen, but, going forward, I think more and more people are finding out about us every day.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, too, looking at staff and how our goal is to help staff be better online and be better digitally and be able to do what they do really well in person and bring a little bit of that online. And for me, that especially means making their communication more effective, which email is no longer a great way to communicate with students, especially young students who they didn't really email in high school, not nearly to the degree that they are expected to check their email in college. And so being briefer, being more concise, and really getting to the heart of what am I trying to do, and then augmenting that email with other kinds of communications, whether it be social media, whether it be texting.
Yeah, I think metrics are, there's a million ways to go, right? You have all the metrics. We know the numbers are important. We know we're going to have to show them in an annual report somewhere or an infographic or something that matters at some point. But I think for us, 10 days ago, we were actually asked to present to the university leadership team. And this is the president and about the top 75 school deans and VPs from across the campuses. And our boss took a major gamble. It would have been one thing to put me in front of them at 35. I probably would have been the youngest person to ever present. And these events happen about 3 times a year. They're caucused in a room for 3 days. They're getting thrown information at them after information. And Mark actually had Nick come and present. And Nick presenting on Gen Y and iGen and what's coming and why people are communicating. I think it's very, very different to have an incredibly intelligent young person who's in that space saying, listen, I was a student and you have to trust me on this. And then for me to come in and say, and this is how our office is changing how we communicate, I think there's some authenticity. I've been here 15 years. I understand this from a 30,000 foot level. I understand the limitations more than I'd like, as what we're trying to do. Nick is wide-eyed and wants to do everything in this space. And I think when you put the 2 things together and put them in front of an audience that maybe hasn't had the time to think about the space, or, you say social media, and to them, social can be considered fluff. If it's outside of the classroom, this was a groundbreaking moment because the president actually stopped the presentation, called it a renorming moment to all the school deans, and asked them to consult with us about how they're communicating. So we are not consulting. We went from students 10 days ago. We have meetings set up with 9 different schools and 12 academic divisions, including alumni relations, including development, including admissions. So this to us is success. You can pick a metric, you can put your finger on it, but when we have our peers sitting in meetings saying, okay, it's time, we want to be in this space, and we actually have a little bit of a foot in the door and feel confident about what we've done and what we're trying, that to me was success. We're doing something right here.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with a great anecdote to share. And then I guess it brings up one of my final questions, which will start to wrap the show a little bit, is probably going to be one of the more loaded questions again. So you've launched relatively recently. It's a pretty interesting and really strong interactive campaign. I think it's got some very strong goals, really great implementation, a strong team behind it. What's next? I mean, that's kind of the question that's always so hard to answer, especially in emerging spaces like this. But I'm sure you guys have been thinking a lot about that at the same time. So, what do you see moving forward for a project like this? Where does it go? How does it shape? What are you hoping for it to continue to achieve as we look farther down the line?
I have two things that pop into my head that are more programmatic or structured. What is this campus connections, because we're on 6 campuses and the time zones and all that other stuff.
Continents.
6 continents.
Yeah.
That's true. We're on 15 campuses,
15
6
campuses.
continents. I think for us, being able to run an event and live stream and do a Google Hangout and actually have students at all of those campuses able to talk and not just do it once, but have this be a regular part of their NYU experience, I think will be amazing. And having a back channel and being able to participate, having faculty involvement on that would be, I think, incredible. So that's one thing that's kind of a pipe dream. The second is this notion of teaching. So we have these students that we know are amazing, and we want them to professionally develop into, superstars in the space, hopefully, whether it's higher ed or wherever it is. Them being able to teach 15 or 20-minute presentations on their strengths. These students being able to hold trainings for staff at NYU, the 14,000 staff and faculty we have, being able to invite them in and teach them, I think is something that's very, very different and will be kind of secondary to what we're doing on the platforms, but I think will really show kind of the grown-ups out there that the students have a lot to offer.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Well, in that vein, I don't know if it's quite ready to be public or if we asked permission or anything, but we're planning to host a conference in early April. We're still ironing out the details, but I think one thing that we keep resonating about is instead of having, professionals come in and, everyone learns from, the same pool of people that you see at conferences, we're going to have students come, and it's going to be a staff conference to learn from our students.
And then have a mentorship component of that. So if we can get the superstars in the room, and we can get those guys from Boston to come down, and those guys in New Jersey that we all know about to come over, to have them then sit with the students and do a round table and just let them talk, so that these students can connect to the adults who are in the world doing this. So again, in 3-4 years, when they're searching for employment opportunities, that they have that. So that to us is really important, because I know every time I sit down with one of our students, or with Nick or Guido for that matter, I'm learning something. So I really want to kind of turn the tables on a conference and really let the students stand out. And that would mean somebody presenting from Abu Dhabi live to a group of people who are here in New York.
Well, I first of all absolutely love it. That's some big, ambitious ideas, and I totally think it's awesome and refreshing to hear. And just to share a little back channel love, got to say too, one of my favorite people, Mayon from Oberlin, just saying this HigherEdLive is actually precisely the push I need to polish this piece. Talking about how you are her kind of people and inspiring her, and I agree. I mean, this stuff is really an integrated, strong approach. It's just, to me, this is the prime example of what we should be seeing in this space in 2012. It's understandable that as an industry we weren't there a couple of years ago. I mean, Lord knows we're still learning, we're still trying to figure things out, but we're at a point now where I think a lot of us can follow your lead and do things like this and take a real integrated approach and take a leap and do something bigger and more organized and a little smarter, and get the same kind of results, hopefully. I mean, I think you guys are literally just beginning. It's going to be the kind of thing I probably come on every 6 months or something, because I have a feeling we're going to look back on this show now and be like, oh, that was when #NYU was a little kid and now it's growing up.
Nick, for your questions, what's the goal and how does it work and what platforms are you using? I think we're going to take your question list, and once a month, he's going to go home and write the answers to it. I'm going to go home and write the answers. And at the end of the year, we're going to check back and see every single month. These answers are going to be completely different. And we were laughing about that just before the show. So it's an exciting ride.
And it's a living thing. I love that. It's not the kind of project or campaign where it's, we did this and now it's over. We're going to do it one way or the other. This is very much living. And like you said, student bodies change too, especially as you bring new students in. I mean, we see that all the time, that just different generations of students use different things, and you never really know what people are going to want to use. And kind of you're meeting people where they are, and providing them with content that they need to connect with each other. I love it. I think it's incredibly ambitious what you're doing with trying to multiple continents and campuses. And someone as myself who came from UCLA before I came to SNHU, I was part of a UC system that was very fractioned. where there was not a cohesive brand or experience for a UC system, where there could have been. And even within UCLA, there was so many different departments and divisions that didn't feel very tightly knit sometimes. And now at SNHU, where we primarily are reaching out to adult learners and online students, primarily students all over the world, and continuing to think of how can we help connect them. These are the kind of questions that I think it's so exciting to try to answer with this kind of technology. So before I let you guys off the hook and off the show, I've provided so much information, I'm going to ask one more question, which I hope is valuable to the folks watching tonight, which is, what's the best advice you can give folks that are watching right now that are inspired from this? What did you wish you maybe thought of 6 months ago? Bestow upon us the lessons that you've learned through doing in the past 6 months, and maybe save a few of us just a couple gray hairs, if at all possible.
Mine's simple. If you have a student that you're working with and you see potential in them, hire them. I mean, I just don't think you can teach the complexity of a university and the experience of a university to somebody coming in from the outside. And I know that there are exceptions to this rule, but if you have somebody in front of you that already knows those things and has the skills, just take a risk and go out on. I mean, again, it's been an incredible year working around, young alums, working. You can learn so much. So that's the thing. I think Christian Anisette, I'm going to put his last name, from Portland State, presented at NASPA Tech a year ago, and I looked at him, that's Nick. Like, this is what schools need to be doing. They need to be taking risks and hiring young people to be in this space. And we need to get out of the ego, we being a general term for old folk like myself, and actually listen. So that would be the number one thing I'd say.
Yeah. For me, I think I agree with that. I mean, you should definitely hire young grads.
And pay them more?
And pay them more.
Yes.
That was a good thing.
It was coming.
I think that I would say, I hope this isn't a conflicting message, but one, don't be so afraid of it. I think a lot of staff that I've talked to have been so concerned with, but what if this happens, or what if this happens, and why isn't there like more of a policy? Like, why don't I have like a response workflow? Like, what if this kind of comment comes in? Don't be afraid of it, because if people are having conversations in person, face to face, every day, and think about it like you would there. Like, yes, other people are seeing, but you're not going to all of a sudden post something that you wouldn't say directly to a student. And so making it more of, this is a conversation. You are just being your natural social self, as we all are social animals, and just doing it in a new, evolved way, let's say. At the same time, go in, take baby steps, get into one platform, try to do it well. Once you've got that kind of under your belt, then adopt another one. I think that there are some people, and this is what I was really concerned with when we were starting #NYU, is we were not on every platform all at once. We generally waded into the water with each of them. And we still are in a lot of ways. We still want to build up more of what we're doing on Foursquare. And, whether it's been time or other issues, we just, haven't. And now we're finally getting to the point where we can. And so just being able to have the time and mental space to be like, I'm excited about this and I want to do it well. So I'm not going to take on a million different things. I'm going to focus on this for 2 weeks, and then I'll start the other thing, focus on that.
And I think the 6 months ago question, it wasn't until I put myself at a NASPA Tech conference or reached out to people who are already doing these things to ask the questions that my brain started working better. So I think don't be afraid. If you see something you like online, it's so easy now with Twitter, it's so easy with Facebook to actually just tell somebody they're doing a good job and to get what you can from them. I think both of us are so transparent. Everything we're doing, we're so excited about. If we do a one-pager on how to teach Twitter, we want everybody to have it. Don't recreate the wheel. Like the whole privacy, this is what we're doing. Just let it out there. This is good for all of us. So I don't think there's any competition with social media as far as higher ed, and I think it's one of the few places that's the case. So reach out to your colleagues and learn what you can.
And definitely feel free to reach out to us.
Well, I
love to talk to people.
Well, I love that. I mean, I love the idea of giving back and contributing that. I appreciate your time tonight in doing so, and I appreciate you guys welcoming that. When I think about this, the one thing I'll say about hiring students, the thing I love, and this is something that I think the older I get personally as a marketer and someone who's been in the space for a while, I just keep going back to at the end of the day, it is absolutely all about the brand. And what is a brand and what is a living brand? And it's love the fact that tapping a student, because you just can't teach love for a brand. You can train on how to execute things, but you can't teach someone how to love what it means to be part of a community like NYU. I mean, you just can't, and it's hard. And it's something that's so important, and it's not always tangible. But I think that you guys have done a really great job in kind of capturing that and watering it and letting it continue to grow, and that's really, really cool. So, I guess without further ado, let me just say, very much so, both to Nick and first off, I'm impressed. I think what you guys have done is really great. It's really cool. I can't wait to watch it continue to grow. And more importantly, thank you guys for coming on tonight to share it with all of us.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, really, really appreciate it. Thank you guys. And thank you guys for watching. It's been another episode of Higher Ed Live. I am back at a special day, but regular time, next Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, here in Manchester with the one and only Michael Staten, founder of Integral, who also, little did you know, or maybe you did, was the co-founder with me of Higher Ed Live. He definitely helped make this happen over 2 years ago, and he is here in Manchester, so I'm bringing him on to have a special conversation with him Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, as Ashley Hennigan is off next week, but very busy this week at NACAC in Denver. So to Ashley, I say hello. Everybody tweet her, say thank you. She's posting a slew, an army of blog posts from NACAC. I mean, I'm seeing them in the queue on the back end of the site, guys. Hold on to your seats. It's awesome. So with that, follow those, and you can catch this episode and every episode we absolutely ever broadcast from now all the way back over 2 years ago. 150 episodes, all available on demand just for you over at HigherEdLive.com. Without further ado, I am Seth Odell. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks to our guests. I hope you all have a fantastic evening. I will see you guys Tuesday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Until next time, I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.